this report that I became involved on behalf of Syria in relation to these issues on Rafik Hariri. That report concluded that the assassination was carried out by a group with an extensive organisation, considerable resources and capabilities. There is converging evidence pointing at Lebanese and Syrian involvement in this terrorist act. The Commission was of the view that the international community had to assist and cooperate with the Lebanese authorities in the field of security and justice. Interesting that the report was framed in this way because in fact Melis had never made any request to Syria for any assistance or cooperation. He'd just gone to Lebanon and investigated, and I think expected the Syrians to come over the border and start cooperating with him. He displayed an amazing naivety in diplomacy and caused enormous ruptures in the Arab world for his handling of this whole matter. He was not seen as being an independent man. He started to reinvestigate the explosion, looking at the forensics that were taken by the Lebanese. Point not made in his report, the very underdeveloped nature of the Lebanese police force. It's not organised like the Met Police here. They don't routinely take DNA samples. They don't routinely go to an explosion scene and start taking traces and looking for fingerprints. I mean, these events are so common in Beirut that it ain't worth the time. They'd never process the information, given the amount of explosions and the crimes that happened there. And the whole state wasn't built up in the same way that the French law enforcement agencies are, or the US, or Dutch, or Germans. And a significant point could have been made as to how badly resourced the Lebanese police in fact were. The Security Council then passed Resolution 1636 and wanted Syria and took note that it would cooperate with the Commission and fully implement commitments that it was making. And this was where I was called in as to what rights the Syrians had as against this UN Security Council resolution and as against Melis and the Independent Investigation Commission. Because within the Security Council resolution, at Article 11, Syria must detain Syrian officials or individuals whom the Commission considers as suspected of involvement in planning, sponsoring, organising or perpetrating this terrorist act, and make them fully available. The Commission shall have against Syria the same rights and authorities, and Syria must cooperate. The Commission can have the authority to determine the location and modalities for interview of Syrian officials and individuals it deems relevant to the inquiry. So it was all right for the UN to pass what is in fact a section in an Act of Parliament saying you can just detain people, you don't have to have reasonable grounds for suspicion. you can determine yourself how they're to be interviewed, and you can decide where and under what circumstances you want. This caused an amazing reaction in the Arab world, and then I started to broker with the UN modalities for the interview, and they agreed that international lawyers could be present. We couldn't record the interviews of people they wished to question. It was agreed that the Syrians could be flown out of Syria to Vienna in a special immune flight, taken to the UN building in Vienna, and then investigations take place there. They were to be questioned, and we could make our own notes as to what was said in the investigation. Very interesting issue for an international lawyer here, because I'd been brought up with the tribunal establishing clear modalities of interview, that they had to be video recorded, that they had to be in the presence of counsel, that you were given certain rights. And here in operation, the Security Council itself was chucking the rule book out on the rights of suspects, or indeed the rights of witnesses, and was determining that the Commission could do what it liked in relation to potentially suspect interviews. Second report was issued in the December, and in this the Commission set out the steps that had been taken of the interviews of, in fact it was the Chief of Military Intelligence from Syria, was who I was with in Vienna, and a number of high-level generals. They then wanted access to Syrian intelligence files. They wanted to interview witnesses in Syria. They wanted to also interview the Syrian president, al-Bashir, and Assad, and other Syrian leading officials. Interesting step here. Traditionally, heads of state have an immunity from such things as prosecutions. Within the statutes of the war crimes tribunals, they don't. But that's a specific statute passed by the Security Council. Here there was no specific statute in relation to this particular situation. Again, massive controversy in the Arab press as to the insult to the Syrian president, Assad, and the insinuations that were being made by Melis as against him. And my advice was to the president, don't agree to it. Make them write on a sheet of paper questions they want to ask you, and then you may write back your answers, but don't go in for a formal interview. I couldn't see George Bush doing it. I couldn't see Tony Blair doing it. I couldn't see any other head of state doing it. Why the hell should you? In fact, he disregarded that, and he said, I've got nothing to hide, and I'll do the interview. And so Melis's policeman came to Damascus, went to the presidential palace, leather jackets on, German policemen. They didn't know what to ask. They were there 30 minutes, asked him bugger all, and then went back. And the whole thing was absolutely ridiculous. Again, this is the sort of situation you find yourself in. These organisations stoke controversy against the so-called bad guys. And I think Assad had a very smart political antennae out and understood that. And although there were allegations against him made by people like Walid Jumblat and others who are the most unreliable people you could probably hope to come across. He decided he would take the interview, and it actually led to nowhere. But an interesting problem. And soon after that, Melis was changed, and a man called Serge Bramets, who was the deputy prosecutor from the International Criminal Court, took over as the chief policeman, an investigator, and he established a normal diplomatic political relationship with Syria, and the whole thing, after a few months, quietened down, and there was no controversy as between Syria and the investigating body for the UN. I've already explained to you that these reports come out every 6 months, and since the setting up of the Lebanese tribunal, the Independent Investigation Commission is separate from the tribunal, although all its evidence has to be handed over to the tribunal, so that it is able, through its prosecution department, to review the materials that were obtained. Now, the ad hoc tribunal itself. The original plan for this was to have a tribunal of international character. Fuad Sinora, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, wrote to Kofi Annan and requested that a tribunal of an international character be convened inside or outside Lebanon to try those responsible for the Hariri assassination. So letters written from Lebanon. I don't think he did it independently. I think there had been discussions behind the scenes, and it went to Kofi Annan, who gave the letter to his legal team and to the Security Council, and requested the consideration to the establishment of a tribunal of international character, whatever that may mean, be given. Resolution 1644 was passed. This requested Kofi Annan to identify the type of assistance and scope of the Tribunal of International Character. At this stage, as you can see, underscores Syria's obligation and commitment to cooperate fully, so all peace and love had broken out between Syria and the Security Council on this matter. And then in a report in 2006, Kofi Annan recommended to the Security Council that a mixed tribunal was the best balance for achieving a court of justice in relation to this issue. And by that, he meant having Lebanese laws, but international judges, international prosecutors, and applying international law within the Lebanese judicial system, because international law is seen as being so universal, it is part of a national system, and requesting that this be a Lebanese-run show, very similar